The following is a paid advertisement of St. Anthony Hospital Orthopedics. References to any specific product, services, or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by St. Anthony Hospital, Carroll Broadcasting, or its advertisers. The views expressed by the host or guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Welcome to the St. Anthony Hospital Orthopedic Show with Dr. Richard Godding. Dr. Godding specializes in joint preservation, reconstruction, and replacement surgery, and brings over 25 years of orthopedic excellence to St. Anthony Hospital and to the Carroll area. For more information about Dr. Godding, his practice, or St. Anthony Orthopedics, go to santanthonyhospital.org or make an appointment by calling 712-794-5536.
Good Sunday morning, Iowa. It's Dr. Rick Godding. Thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with me here this morning. And last week was daylight savings, which, it's terrible when, for me, the way, it means that there's not a lot of time to get anything done after work. But, waking up and spending the entire day in the nighttime, essentially, because you get up and you get to work, and it's dark when you get there and it's dark when you leave. So we're not there quite yet, and at least we've gotten a morning reprieve now. It's at least light driving to work, and it gets darker and darker until, as we know, December 20th, the winter solstice. And so I count the days to that, starting about now. Because it's actually nice because it's interesting because it's really the beginning of winter because the sunlight lags. So in other words, the weather lags the sunlight, so it's going to start getting longer in the tooth, the days, as it goes through the winter. And then, I know I'm not telling you anything. It's just I'm just processing it. I have to process the winter because I don't love it. And so many of my patients take off out of Iowa for the winter, and it makes a lot of sense. And I think probably at some point I will do that for at least a major part of it. A lot of my patients go, well, there's three main ones that I see: Texas, Arizona, and Florida. And it just makes perfect sense. And a lot of the farmers out there, you guys, you can fix things up in the winter, but you can't grow in an Iowa winter, so it makes total sense. The first time I kind of started hearing about that and that sort of seasonal snowbird thing, I was living in Champaign-Urbana. When I grew up in Oklahoma, I didn't really know any farmers, and the Oklahoma winters I didn't know a lot of people that bugged out of the Oklahoma winters because they're just not that bad. They're not nearly as cold or as dark as it gets here. And even when my dad lived in Colorado when I was growing up, and we didn't really know any farmers out there either. So once I moved to Champaign-Urbana, which was just for a couple of years after I left Kauai, I started meeting some farmers that would get out of Dodge. Although it's not the biggest farming town, there were definitely farmers around. And then, out here in Carroll, there's a lot of farmers, and it makes sense. And I'm jealous at this point. And I start thinking, well, I'm 55, I'll be 56 next year, so I'm starting to track retirement. I figure about 7 more years here at St. Anthony's, and that's enough time for my youngest daughter to graduate from college. And get them through college. Then I'll see what else. I'm probably gonna at least do. There's a lot of part-time work available for surgeons, and I enjoy what I do so much that I'm pretty certain that I'll be working for a long time. And you get into a lot of these philosophical discussions. People say, "Oh, well, don't work any longer than you have to," and then other people say, "I kind of like what I do." And I'm in that camp of I really like what I do. Obviously, it's the type of job I have. It becomes an identity. And like I've said a million times, I feel very, very blessed to be able to have a job that gives me so much fulfillment, and that I can really start to look back a little bit on how many thousands of surgeries I've done. It would be back of the napkin, quick math would be at somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 surgeries. Somewhere close to between 2,500 and 3,000 knee replacements, and the bulk of the rest of them were shoulders, and then just sort of fracture work and things like that. So, but I think about that every once in a while, and it's humbling, and it's also it gives me some peace, that I've done some things. So, my young niece, she's a nurse, and she's going to end up becoming a nurse practitioner at some point, and she's actually out in San Diego now to stay warm, working as a travel nurse. And the money in travel nursing that was going on during COVID has dried up. And what I mean when I say that is they're not getting paid exorbitant rates anymore because there's no sort of staffing crisis on a nationwide basis. And so it's more of she just wants to have some adventure while she's young. Her boyfriend, who is from Iowa here, is deployed in Iraq right now, and so she's got a year while he's gone to just kind of go do stuff that she wants to do, and then I guess they'll figure it out when he gets back, whether they're going to go ahead and get engaged and married and all that stuff. So what I was saying is she and I, we talk sometimes about how happy we are that we've chosen to do what we're doing, because, it does. It's nice, even if you get overwhelmed, because any job can get overwhelming, and when life overwhelms you, whatever, at least you get that job where you can go and you can really say, all right, even if it's tough, there's a lot of a reward there. And sort of along those lines, I had a patient last week who was from Des Moines, and this patient was an ex-healthcare worker, and he and his wife came to have a surgery, and they really just couldn't stop talking about the experience that they had at St. Anthony's. And, because it really is, it's a very different experience. Now, I understand this from just my own lifetime of experience being a provider, but also, I've been a healthcare consumer myself and for multiple people in my family, and I do understand the difference between what's happening at St. Anthony's and what is able to happen in other places. And you can't manufacture the environment of a hospital that is a smaller rural hospital, even though St. Anthony's is pretty good size. I mean, it's much bigger than pretty much any other county hospital out there. And it's not a county hospital, but it sort of functions in that role, if you will. It's unique because it's a private hospital. It's a Catholic hospital, and if you don't know, Carroll's a very big Catholic town. There's a Catholic school in town. There's a Catholic hospital in town. Both of them are private, and there's just a real dedication in that community to making sure that there is a good school and good hospital. And the community, even the non-Catholic community, obviously sends their kids to the school and uses the hospital for health care. But being in an overall environment that is more rural, it just becomes, you can't manufacture that the people here are taking care of their friends and neighbors and family, because eventually you will. If you're not one day doing that, the next day you might be, or next week. And so, I've had patients in the past tell me that they've been in a hospital in a city, and, people don't even nod or smile or say hi when they walk by in the halls. That's just not how it is at St. Anthony's. And so, like I said, you can promote culture and all that on an institutional level. Like, you can have the hospital say, okay, we're going to be really nice and really friendly and all that. And I'm sure all hospitals have some sort of a program like that. But it just becomes sort of the culture in a smaller town is a little bit more human on the interactions, a little bit more time to talk to a passerby, a little bit more, and again, I've lived in New York City and Washington, D.C., and Honolulu, Hawaii, and Sydney, Australia, and I've lived in a lot of cities. And I know the difference, and it's not just in Iowa. The difference in Hawaii. When I did my general surgery internship in Honolulu, and definitely Hawaii has aloha. I mean, Honolulu is a much, much friendlier city than any other city of its size that I've ever been to. But there's definitely a difference between Honolulu and Kauai. And Kauai is very rural, and that's where I spent the first 10 years of my career. And that's really, I went there because my view on it at that point, I had no sort of underlying desire to work in a rural area. I was neither wanted to do that nor didn't want to do that. But at the time, I had really gotten into surfing, and I really enjoyed the 1 year that I spent in Hawaii. And that kind of came about. I had been to Hawaii one time when I was a junior in high school, or sophomore in high school, and I really loved it. And so the way things work in medicine is after you get out of medical school, you match into a residency, and it's not like you're offered 5 or 6 different residencies. Like everybody lists their 5 top or 10 or whatever it is, and then the residence lists you at the end of medical school, and then there's a match made, and you don't get to say, oh no, I didn't want to go there, I want to go somewhere else. No, you either go there or you're unemployed. So I matched into a program in New York City, St. Vincent Catholic Medical Centers, actually. Started at a Catholic hospital. Actually, Georgetown is a Catholic school. I have been. It has been a journey that there's always been the underlying Christian ethos of everywhere that I've worked, and so that's kind of been cool. Well, okay, not in Kauai. Not in Kauai. Although the community there is very strong. It was a public hospital, so obviously they steer clear of that kind of an institutional influence. So anyway, I matched into orthopedic surgery out of medical school, and so that orthopedic surgery at the time was a 5-year residency, but you needed a 1-year general surgery before that. Well, the hospital program where I was, the orthopedic chairman and the general surgeon chairman didn't see eye to eye on some things, and so he made us go get our own general surgery internship. Most of them are combined, but a few of them you just show up year 2, and it's up to you to find your 1 year. And so when I looked at what was open, Honolulu was there, and I called them up, and they said, yes, we would love to have you. And so I went out there and spent a year and really got into surfing. And then, to my pleasant surprise, New York City actually offers some great surf, and I lived essentially right on the beach, right outside of New York City, and would drive in 45 minutes and drive out and surf. And, I said, man, this is really cool. I want to surf more, so I want to work in Hawaii when I'm done. And I ended up doing my fellowship in Australia, partially because I wanted to surf, but partially because I wanted a big life adventure, and they have, wonderful training down there. It's a very interesting medical system down there. Everybody has what they call Medicare, and it's different to our Medicare. It would be more like the National Health Service in Canada or in Great Britain, whereas everybody's covered. And there are public hospitals, and that's all they do. But then there's a very big, vibrant private as well. So everybody can get their insurance through the government at, you say, free or no cost, whatever. I mean, somebody's paying for it. It's taxes, right? But you wait. You wait. Sometimes if you wanted to get your knee replaced, it could take up to 3 years. And so that's how those places with socialized medicine, the wait is part of the cost control. And part of that is, from a statistical perspective, some of those people who need knee replacements will die waiting. You don't die of your knee arthritis, but in the age range, you're going to have a certain percentage of people that if you make them wait for 3 years for something, certain percentage of them aren't going to have it done. And then some of them will also go pay to have it done. So, the wait is part of the cost control. But I digress. I'm not trying to get too far into that. Anyway, when I left Australia, I wanted to go to Hawaii, and I said I will take whatever open job is in Hawaii. And there was a small hospital on the west side of the island of Kauai, and it was my first foray into rural orthopedics. And this hospital was kind of visionary, and they allowed me to be the first first orthopedic surgeon in the state of Hawaii doing computer-navigated knee replacements, which was kind of the precursor to robotics. And so, I had a really good 10 years there, and then there was a lot of... it's hard to keep doctors there, and our doctor pool in our primary care network was going down, and it looked like the hospital was going to go under. So I came back. But what I got from that is that I really found a lot of things about rural orthopedics that I really liked, and that if you had the right setting, it could be super rewarding. And so that's why I like St. Anthony so much, because it does have that wonderful blend of the more human, I don't want to say touchy-feely, but I can't think of a better way to say that right now, but just a more human interactions, between all of the staff and the patients. I'm talking housekeeping, I'm talking about food services. Everybody there's just this really wonderful vibe, if you will, at St. Anthony's. And we also have the Mako robot and whatever else I want. Dr. Dirks and I, they got him a brand new hip table when he got here, and now there's a better one that came out, and he said, I can do this surgery better with this table, and they got him a new table. And these tables are quite expensive, so they're just really, we're fortunate that the hospital has a good financial situation. There's a good endowment, and we, under the current administration, have been doing a whole lot better on the annual finances. It was a little rough around COVID, but everybody was, and so we've kind of come through that very well and are doing well. So yeah, it's a real. I just enjoy it. And so this one patient that I had last week, kind of, as they do sometimes, reminded me of just kind of how lucky I am to be able to work in this particular very unique setting. And I know Dr. Dirks feels the same way. He hasn't seen quite as many different, because he's sort of younger, he hasn't seen quite as many different settings as I have. Plus I went away to school and then different places for different training and stuff like that. But he did his residency in a different place, and he worked somewhere else before that. So he understands. He understands how unique it is, and he's pretty excited, of course, to be home and taken care of. And for him, it's really cool. I walk through the office when he's having office hour. Oh, Michael, tell your mom I said hi. A lot of the patients, watch this young surgeon grow up, and that brings a real special blend into it as well. But I just was thinking about that after that patient last week kind of went on and on, he and his wife both, and they'd been, he had been a healthcare worker, physician actually, for a very long time, and was retired, and came up, heard my radio show, and came up and had surgery, and just couldn't say enough great things about the entire experience. And so it reminded me that, hey, what we have here is really special, and it's a pleasure to be a part of it. And also, Thanksgiving's coming around, so I'm excited about that, and not so excited about cleaning the leaves up in my yard. But anyway, it is a wonderful time of year, and we'll go through the holidays together. So I'll be back, and you have a blessed week, Iowa.
This has been the St. Anthony Hospital Orthopedic Show with Dr. Richard Godding. For more information about Dr. Godding, his practice, or St. Anthony Hospital Orthopedics, go to www.santanthonyhospital.org or make an appointment by calling 712-794-5536.